Okay, we should be good to start now.
Members of the committee, are you ready to begin? It looks like we have 4 attendees, 4 members of the public. We could wait another minute, or we could start. Are we ready?
Is PCT up and ready to go then?
Yeah, we're good to go. Thanks.
Okay. Sure.
Great. Members of the subcommittee, I don't know if we have a chair. I'll call you co-chairs. This is the Public Safety Subcommittee. And we were asked by the council at the last meeting, September 15th. We had a special meeting and a presentation by our DA on Andrew Harmon shooting. There was lots of public comment, dialogue by the council, and the conclusion of that meeting was that this incident, this entire investigation, that we should send a letter to the state attorney general requesting them to do an independent review of this investigation. And there was some specific conversation about that review. Is it a review? Is it a new investigation? What should the letter say? What should we send to the AG? And so at the conclusion of that, the decision was made, well, let's have the city attorney and the city manager draft the letter and take it to our public safety subcommittee so we can get it just right and make sure we get that letter just the way we want it. So Catherine did immediately reach out to the Attorney General's office, had a nice conversation with them. We did draft a letter, and that letter was sent out with the agenda yesterday to give you a chance to read it beforehand, give the public a chance to read it beforehand. We already caught a couple things, and so I have a feeling we'll be looking at a revised version at the end, but it would be our recommendation, you have public here, that you take public comment, that you talk about it, that we start with the first letter, and then get to the correct letter if there are revisions made to the letter. And I will just say, before I turn it over to Catherine, from what I understand, she had a very positive conversation with the Attorney General's office. They already knew about the case. They keep up on these things, so they already knew, and they saw it in the news, and we're ready for it already, even before we send a letter. But also, I thought was really impressive that they said to her, they'll accept all information that other members of the public want to send. So besides us sending just a letter making the request, they'll accept anything that any person, any member of the public wants to send, information they have, evidence, anything. So I thought that was just unexpected for me. I didn't realize that they would do that. And so I thought that actually made it easier coming into this meeting today, because I think that was one of the questions about what our letter should say. And once the AG indicated that they're willing to have people send them whatever they want and they'll accept it and look at it, that was welcoming. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city attorney, and then we'll turn it back to the committee.
Great, thanks, Bob. Yeah, so I spoke to Supervising Attorney General Joyce Blair, who is the supervising Deputy AG who handles these matters last week. I think it was on Thursday, about the procedures of making this request for an independent review. And as the city manager said, their office is already reviewing it. They're already aware, and confirmed that there's no set procedure for how to request review, but rather, and there's no formal start or stop either. They're open to information. We're going to go ahead and, obviously send this letter, as well as any and all comment received by the city to the Attorney General's office when we send this letter. But the public's welcome to send their own information, and the the email address of Ms. Blair, no relation, is on the cover of that letter. So the draft before you, I worked with the city manager on. I do want to note that I will be recommending one correction that was raised by a member of the public in respect to one of the facts here, which dealt with the number of volleys that were fired at Ms. Harmon. There's a reference to a deputy firing 11 rounds in 2 separate volleys. That actually should be 3, and that comes up a couple times in the letter. So I will be recommending that change to the extent we keep in that paragraph with that set of general facts. Otherwise, I'll be taking notes here, and my goal would be to take notes, and to the extent that there are any additions or corrections, we can work through those, and I could even share my screen with any changes in red line as we go forward. Any questions in terms of my discussions with the Attorney General, procedures?
No.
All right. So with that, I think you could go ahead and deliberate and take public comment as well.
You're muted, Debbie.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the public for sure. Now's the time.
Okay. So first we have John Olin. John, go ahead.
Hello, council members and staff. Thanks for having me on today. This is a real sad kind of meeting. Mostly looks like the letter to me, you're all on the right track. A couple of concerns that I would have is that it wasn't just members of the public that expressed concern, that both the mayor and council member Brownstone expressed concern with some of the aspects of the narrative of the story. And I would call your attention to what for me is the real issue here, is that she was shot in the back. That she received 2 fatal shots in the back, and in the investigative report, there was no explanation for how she got shot in the back. And during the DA's presentation, which was really appreciated, he offered a theory, and he made clear that it was just a theory as to how she was shot in the back, and that happened during the 3rd volley. But in fact, in their investigative report, Deputy Dominguez states clearly that he thought he had hit her during his 2nd volley of shots, which was 5 shots. And his reasoning was he had seen her shoulders flinch, that she shoulders shrugged, and then the gun flew out of her hand. And so it's much more likely that Deputy Dominguez's theory of how she was shot in the back is how she ended up getting shot in the back. And it was disturbing that the DA would just wing it like that and offer a theory without any kind of proof, without any kind of science behind it, with no acknowledgement of the other facts of the case and, the descriptions and the testimony given by Deputy Dominguez. So that'd be one area of concern. Another is through my interactions with the DA himself, it's become clear, and some of his co-workers, it's become clear the deputy attorney has never seen the log file, that he is taking the sheriff's word for it, that the video is what we are being shown, and he's never actually seen or taken the time, or I'm not even sure Mr. Wagstaff even knew that there was a log file that would confirm or the authenticity of the fact that the video doesn't exist. In any other situation, in a major city where there was, the press had resources to look into these things, this would be something that would be pretty controversial, even in normal times. There is video showing that her hands were up in the air, that her back was to Deputy Dominguez, the gun flew out of her hand, and she continued to be shot at. And none of this is acknowledged in the DA's report. And obviously the video that's missing is the key video here. Is something that would confirm or deny whether these mistakes were made, whether Sandra tried to give up and was shot in the back. And obviously at the end, I don't know that anybody can judge what the officers did in the final round volley. She put them into position where they had to shoot her. But that's not the point of all, at least my concern, and I believe others' concern with all of this, is not so much what the officers did, is the investigation itself. It's already can be seen through a quick Google search that police departments have in the past modified video before uploading it to the evidence cloud using the same technology that the sheriff's office uses. That when those people did that, they were caught when they looked at the log files. And the reason the log files are so valuable to a company like Axon is they have evidence. They have the information that they store has to be admissible in a court of law. They can't have data changing willy-nilly. They can't have an attorney coming in there and saying they've got no safeguards to prevent people from changing things. The log files exist. And even anybody that's in computer technology would know that there are log files for that kind of thing. And then anybody in legal end of the aspect would understand why those log files have to exist, because it has to protect the chain of evidence, the authenticity of what Axon is selling. Basically, they're a multi-billion dollar company. They depend on people believing them. So I believe I've said more than my 3 minutes worth, and I appreciate that. But I would again like you to make clear that it wasn't just the public that has concerns. And I would like for you to express your concerns if you have them in this letter, because the AG sees this all the time. And it would be really simple for any particular city council to appease any kind of public angst about a shooting in their city, simply by saying, fine, we sent it to the AG and asked him to review it. But he gets all kinds of requests like that, and it's a political stunt at that level because everybody knows he's probably not going to look at it. And no one's really making a case as to why he should be looking at it. So thanks again for being able to talk this long. I would hope that you would add your opinions and try to make a case why he should be looking at that. And it should mostly center around, in my opinion, the fact that the district attorney himself has not even seen those log files. And I'm sure your attorney could make a quick call over and would confirm that before you would put that in a letter. Thanks again for your time. I'll be watching the rest of the meeting. Great job, guys.
And next we have David Ablovi. David, go ahead.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to start by thanking the council and staff for moving deliberately and forward on this issue. Listening to concerns of residents in the community and sifting through a significant amount of evidentiary information shows that the council and staff are responsive to the community you all serve. And I want to express my gratitude along those lines. With that said, and this isn't a real big negative, but I have one fairly important critical comment or note on the letter that I'd like to make here. And that is that the letter does not specify a request for a criminal investigation into both the shooting itself and the investigation that follows. The materials I put in front of you last week in fairly graphic detail, and that was just a very quick highlight. Sorry, someone's driving by. Hopefully you can hear that. Showed why the shooting itself was most likely manslaughter, and it shows how the investigation of that shooting was manipulated criminally, I believe, by moving and tampering with evidence and hiding things and other stuff. So I think it's imperative that in your letter, you call out that you're asking for both of those things to be investigated, because they're both critical to establishing the narrative of what happened here. And that's what the community has asked you to do. That's what you have stepped up and taken action to do, for which I'm grateful. But without clarifying that simple sentence, which right now just asks for, and this is a quote, an independent criminal investigation into the shooting death of 56-year-old Sandra Harmon. That's great. That's part one. But I'm actually as interested or more interested in part two, which is an independent criminal investigation into the criminal investigation that investigated the Sandra Harmon shooting. So I would ask that you make that amendment to the letter and go forward from there. Once again, I'd really like to thank you for your time and effort on this issue. I'm moved by the level of care and commitment that I see everybody in City Hall and on the council extending to the community in our interests and in listening to the community, hopefully to our mutual benefit. So that's it. Thank you very much for what you're doing, and I'll listen from here.
That concludes public comments.
So, it's okay if I start, Harvey?
Fine.
So I agree, and I've shared this with the city attorney. I think we need to be directly asking for an investigation. And I do like Mr. Oblovi's suggestion that we have a two-part, and that would be not just the incident, but the investigation. I think that's important given the missing pieces here. One concern I have, thinking back on the Mr. Wagstaff's discussion of how the bullets may have entered the body. It seems to me ordinarily, isn't there like a ballistics report on how bullets enter bodies and what kinds of bullets and all that stuff? I've not heard any reference at all to a ballistics report. And if there is one, we should ask for it and send that along as well. I think that's really important. Very concerned about camera being turned off, very concerned about absence of log files. I think the city should request those and send those along, or have, the AG's office obtain those. I think that's really critical. Not just to talk about the camera being turned off, but that there should be evidence about how that happened and for how long and all that sort of thing. And I think the letter should specify, the findings, the reasons we're asking for this investigation in a bulleted format, focusing on the facts as we understand them, not being inflammatory with hearsay, but facts at hand. I think staff's done a great job so far. I would slightly retool the letter with those suggestions. And I think that kind of for me. The more I looked back over the between our meeting and now, the more concerned I am. And I'm glad to hear that staff has already consulted with the AGs. That's a great move, and sounds like it's good that the public has a chance to weigh in separately. Thing we may have missed. So that's all I have for the moment.
Thanks, Debbie. I agree that there are two separate issues here, and we should be clear about them. The first is, was the use of force justified, or was there a criminal action here? That is a difficult thing for the AG to assess, but I think we should definitely request that there be a de novo investigation about whether the use of force was justified. Did Sandra Harmon, in fact, shoot first, as is claimed? Did she have her hands up when she was shot? Was she shot in the back, as the coroner's report indicates? Could this situation have been resolved without lethal force? So that's the first part of the independent investigation that we should ask the AG to conduct. I'm actually more concerned about the second issue, which is the report, the DA's report. Having read that whole report, it's set to completely exonerate the deputy's actions. It doesn't seem to be written in a truly fair and unbiased approach. So I think some questions that have been raised already by the public that we've heard today, the manipulation of evidence, the 3 shell casings that suddenly appeared in the wrong place from where the original report claims they had been done. The DA's explanation that they were kicked is really hard to believe that all 3 of them suddenly moved that way. So it's a little disconcerting to think that evidence might have been manipulated. And I think the AG should definitely investigate that. It seems that the first volley, which our city attorney has just acknowledged actually existed, was done from the RV. Was that before Sandra Harmon even had a chance to shoot? Why was that seemingly not emphasized or even explained in the DA's report? And then, as Councilman Ruddick said, I think the most important thing that we really need to get a handle on is what happened to the log files, which would indicate whether or not the body cam was turned off when it was claimed to be turned off. That would be unambiguous evidence to either corroborate or make it seem that the evidence has been manipulated in a way that gives us less confidence that we really have an accurate story of what happened. So I think we should emphasize that the investigation itself needs to be investigated. Thank you.
So, Catherine, I don't know at what point we share the letter and start kind of going through it, but on this point of what we're actually asking them to do, are a review of what the DA did, or start a new investigation, or start a new investigation that includes a criminal component. I mean, I'm not sure what all the differences are, and maybe that would be helpful. I get the difference between reviewing what the DA did and doing an independent investigation. But I guess if we're asking for an independent investigation, it seems to me that's inclusive of everything. They're the pros. This is what they do. So if they agree to do that, they're going to look at everything. And that would imply if they find anything that is criminal in their opinion, they're going to follow it up. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we need to word that the way the committee would like that worded, but I'm not sure, how into the semantics of it we have to get. An investigation would cover that. They would do their job and cover everything. I think we need to be careful, I guess, about kind of directing them how we think they should do their job. We're asking them to do their job. They're the professionals. So I just start with that, and then we can some of the facts that we heard, some of the evidence that Council Member Rarbeck and Ruddick also suggested, and the speakers, and to what extent, yeah, we summarize that in our letter just as examples. We can go into that as well, but I think we need to start with what we're asking for, and is it broad enough?
And I'll just respond to that briefly. So this topic didn't come up in my conversation with the AG's office in terms of an investigation of the investigation. But I would just say, I think from a prosecutor's mindset, they're going to go where the facts are going to lead them. So I think we can go ahead and word it more broadly without necessarily directing their review, because they're going to, we can raise these issues. I've actually been working on a bullet list as we've discussed this, and we could ask, both for, the investigation into the shooting and, the investigation of the DA's investigation. Of course, I think we'll go where the evidence leads them. I think I'll be ready in about 2 minutes to screen share. I just want to double check a couple things.
Can we take like a 5 or 10 minute break? Would that be helpful?
That would be very helpful. Yeah.
Would that be okay with you, Harvey? Like a 10-minute break?
I could probably do it in 5, but I'm open to whatever you'd like.
Well, let's do 5 then.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you open the back door for Keith? Okay. All right.
Are we ready to go back? I can walk through the edits that I made to this document. All right,
Good.
so the first edit was what we discussed in terms of a request to investigate not only the shooting itself, but also the district attorney's investigation itself.
Excuse me, Catherine.
Yes.
I would take away "and as appropriate." We were requesting the AG. Yeah, that's right.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I moved it, but yes, okay, so that is deleted. So both requests are clearly made here.
Good.
Okay, so scrolling down, I just added, according to the district attorney's report, for this whole paragraph, because that's where I got the facts of this statement. The facts are what the facts are, but I'm not trying in this letter to, make any determinations regarding the facts. The 2 to the 3, I noted that earlier, that change is made in this paragraph. Okay, so then the biggest changes are in this on page 2, where I kept a running list of some of the comments, and obviously let me know if I missed anything. So this paragraph, I added a sentence, community members and city council members have similarly identified what they believe are irregularities in the evidence and the district attorney's reports. In all, the following potential issues have been identified. Okay, so the first bullet here, the first deputy turned off his body camera in violation of San Mateo County Sheriff's Office policy. Oops, my track changes is not on. Let me fix that. The sheriff's office has failed to make public the Axon logs for the first deputy's body camera, which could show whether he did in fact turn off his camera prior to confronting Ms. Harmon. I'm just going to pause after each one of these and you can feel free to chime in. No shotgun shell casings were recovered at the scene, which would be expected if Ms. Harmon had fired her gun.
I would take that out, but I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't really very relevant.
I had the same thought just because I felt like during Mr. Wagstaff's presentation, that question was asked and he made it clear that the casings were in the shotgun, expended, and unlike a pistol, the casings don't fly out of the shotgun, they stay in the shotgun.
Got it. Okay.
He did mention that no pellets were found.
And maybe it should say pellets, not casings.
I think it's clear that she did in fact fire, and I don't think we should make a big deal to claim that she didn't fire at all. I think that dilutes our case.
I would still point out that no pellets were found.
Maybe what we could do here would be, let's see how this works. Would that work? The autopsy report was inconclusive as to whether Ms. Harmon had fired a gun.
Well, again, I don't want to make a big deal about, I think on the audio recordings, it's pretty clear that there was at least one shotgun shot that was heard. It's this as distinct from the deputy's pistol. So I wouldn't emphasize the fact that I wouldn't like to claim that she did not fire at all, because she probably did. And as I said, I think it dilutes our case to try to claim that she didn't fire at all. But, you know, if you want to leave it in, I wouldn't object too much.
Any other thoughts? I mean, I don't think this is a critical piece. We could delete this one.
Okay.
Next one, although the deputies have said that they fired at Ms. Harmon from some distance away from her, certain pistol shell casings were found very near Ms. Harmon's body. There is an unexplained bullet hole. And this is actually, some of these I think were from comments that were submitted prior to the meeting that I did note, but there's an unexplained bullet hole in a wall behind the RV, and community members claim to have evidence showing that the first deputy fired shots at the RV.
I don't know if they fired them at the RV. They fired them at her, presumably.
Maybe that one comes out. Mr. Oblovi's information will be shared and they can look at that. We don't necessarily have to have that in our letter.
Yeah.
Good.
And I would also put shotgun pellets in front of pellets.
Okay, thank you. To distinguish them from the deputies. Okay. Let's see, next one. Video from the second deputy's body camera shows that Ms. Harmon had dropped her rifle and was holding her hands in the air just prior to both deputies firing the shots that resulted in her death.
Okay.
Yep.
The autopsy report shows that at least one round entered through Ms. Harmon's upper back, which suggests that the first deputy may have fired at Ms. Harmon while she was facing away from him.
Okay.
This is not a complete sentence, but I can turn that into one. Concerns that the two deputies could have subdued Ms. Harmon without resorting to deadly force.
I would include that.
Oh, okay. Definitely.
I'll wordsmith that so it's actually a sentence. And then noting here, C enclosures, my intention is to submit everything that's been submitted to the city with this letter. And of course, community members are welcome to submit their own materials directly. And then I also added this sentence, and the city manager and I have spoken about this. Just, a bit of a caveat, but just noting in terms of what is in our wheelhouse versus what is in the AG's wheelhouse. It is beyond the scope of the city's capabilities to evaluate this evidence presented by community members in support of their claims. Yet these open questions make it difficult for the Half Moon Bay community to heal from this tragic event. We can wordsmith that obviously, but the intention here is to just note that, we're not trying to be professional fact finders here, but this is, these irregularities have raised enough of a concern that we want to make sure that they are voiced and considered by the AG's office.
Good.
Catherine, I have two things if we go back up to the list.
Great.
Just clarifications. So the first one would be the casings being found near Ms. Harmon's body.
Mm-hmm.
My recollection from last Tuesday night and from the evidence I've seen was that the report doesn't show that they found casings near her, but there was video evidence shared by Mr. Oblovi that in the video still shots, there were casings that were not listed in the report. Does that make sense? That the report itself shows the casings where you'd expect from the video to find them, but in the video, there was some still shots shared that appeared like there were casings in a different location initially.
Right, that does, I do recall that.
So maybe inconsistencies in the location of shotgun casings?
These were the bullet casings from the deputies.
And I really find it disingenuous to claim that, as the DA did, that casings are routinely kicked and located far away from where they came out of the pistol. So that really got my hackles up. I just find it hard to believe.
Isn't that something else that a ballistics report would discuss?
Oh yes, you know what? Thank you for raising that. You mentioned it, and it didn't make it on my list.
I mean, nothing we've seen so far indicates there was a ballistics report or investigation.
Yeah, it was included in the report, if I recall, the ballistics. They test fired the guns.
But the ballistics should have also looked at the access and egress for any bullets into her body and some explanation. You know, like Mr. Wagstaff was just sort of speculating on how the bullets might have entered. A ballistics report in combination with a coroner's report should document that.
Okay.
I would think.
And then when you're finished with that one, Catherine, the next bullet where it talks about Ms. Harmon with her hands above her head just prior to both deputies firing, I think that's important, but I also think it's important to point out that at the time they fired that final volley, she was reaching and had actually had made contact with the shotgun again.
Can you say that again? Does this relate to the
The last bullet on that page.
Okay, video from the second. Okay.
It just, the way it's worded, it implies that her hands were above her head when that third volley was fired, when in fact she had reached for the gun and was touching the gun at the time they fired those shots.
Okay.
At least that's how I saw it. Obviously, the council members have to make a determination how they want to word it.
I have a couple comments as well. So going back to the bullet point you just created, it is unclear whether the ballistic report considered the access of bullets to Miss Harmon's body. So is that I mean, I have to sign this letter. Is that I don't know that. Is that a fact?
Can you say that again, Bob?
The statement says it is unclear whether the ballistic report considered the access of bullets to Miss Harmon's body. I don't have information to make that statement. I don't know who does.
Well, from Wagstaff's description at the meeting, it sounded like he was just totally speculating about how it might have happened. Seems to me if ballistics and the coroner had looked at it, it entered her body at this angle, then you'd be able to tell what really happened. He was just saying, well, you know, where it was, it might have happened this way or it might have happened that way. It seems to me that that's a case for ballistics analysis. But again, I'm not an expert, but I'm just wondering why he was just speculating sort of wildly about, you know, maybe it wasn't her back, maybe it looked like it was in her back because it was going down this way or that way. You know, it just, that seems to me to be too open-ended.
Yeah, I guess for me, I would have to actually, to make that statement, I would have to read the ballistic report and I would then have to consider the access and I would have to conduct my own investigation to make that statement. And I have not done that.
I wonder if there's a way to rephrase this. I mean, so that we don't have to do a lot of extra, homework, noting that we are not, we are not experts in this area. And that's why I put it is unclear, but.
So let me make a suggestion. So leave that out. We talk about her being shot in the back at least once. If there's some dispute over that, that can happen and it can be figured out.
Right.
Take it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then another comment I have, if you can go down one bullet point, Catherine.
Sure.
And again, I guess it matters if these bullet points are just a summary of what we've been told by other people. But then it raises the question, why are we summarizing what other people told us? But that bullet point uses the phrase, which suggests that the first deputy, and then uses the word may. So when you use the word suggests and the word may, I mean, it's just not a statement of fact.
Well, I think the issue is if she's being shot in the back, is that excessive force? You don't have to get into the nitty gritty of it, but the fact of the matter is she was shot in the back.
And we're asking the AG to do their investigation, since they're the experts.
She was shot in the back. She was not rushed. That raises excessive force issues, I think.
Can I see the opening sentence before all the bullet points, Catherine?
Yep. Whoop.
Okay.
Hey, Bob, I wonder if kind of wording this shot in the back statement similar to that final concerns about whether or not they could have subdued her without deadly force. Maybe it's just concerns that
Well,
entered through her back.
I just want to be clear. I mean, the opening sentence, says it, but let's just be clear. I mean, that last bullet point is an opinion. It is not a fact. I mean, I just want to be crystal clear. It is not a fact. It is an opinion.
Which one are you talking about?
The very last one.
Well, that's why initially I thought we should put these bullets maybe as questions. I mean, and it's not just community members who have concerns. Clearly, Harvey and I have concerns too. So that needs to be indicated in that first sentence before the bullets. But, I think these are legitimate concerns. They're going to ferret out whether they're facts or not, hopefully. But
I think, yeah, and I think the opening sentence does it. I'm sorry I'm being a little nitpicky here, but in this world today, we do have challenges with facts, and when people or opinions that are made to be facts, and the mere suggestion of things can be construed as endorsement.
Well, I think that they're going to accept it in the spirit that we've submitted it. I have no problem with us indicating concerns and then the bullet points. These are our concerns. We want them to look at it, evaluate it. Maybe our concerns are unsound. Maybe they're sound, but these are our concerns. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah. It says potential issues have been identified, and they are potential. It doesn't say that we guarantee that they're factually correct, but we are concerned, and I believe they have potential validity, and they should be brought up. So,
and actually, these are the things that we want the AG to address in their report, right? We don't want to make it so general that we just get a general report back or a general investigation. These are the things we want them to look at. These are the things we want them to respond to, right?
And Catherine, in your discussion with the AG's office, did you get the feeling that they would in fact address the individual issues in this letter, or just I
did not. I don't expect that they will necessarily do a point-by-point response to these issues. So that's within their discretion to do that, but it would also be within their discretion to say, thank you for this letter. We, XYZ, and just make a definitive conclusion regarding whether they're going to proceed with a full investigation or determine not to.
They may turn up things that we haven't seen, whatever.
If they did a full investigation, yes.
We are not the sentence at the end, we don't feel like we're equipped to evaluate these, but these are our concerns. I think we've wrapped that up. I think we've conditioned it appropriately.
I can live with that.
So I would like to, of course, give have some time to clean this up and proofread and everything. So once the committee's happy with this, I can work with the city manager to get this in final form and make sure that all materials that have been, transmitted to the city would accompany the letter when it gets sent to the Attorney General, either later today or tomorrow.
I'm happy with this work, and I trust you to do the final little tweaks necessary to make it transmittable.
Great.
I do have one more question, if I may, members of the subcommittee. And Catherine, if you could go to the top, and I'll just pose this as a question because I think we need to be, I just want to make sure we've thought this through. So we are asking for a review and independent criminal investigation into both the shooting death and the district's attorneys. So I understand that we are asking for a review of what the district attorney did. But I do have to ask the question, on what grounds are we asking them to do a criminal investigation of the DA?
I would take out the word criminal.
Yeah, I agree.
Would that work for you, Bob?
Yeah.
How about you, Harvey?
Okay.
Any other comments, feedback?
Thank you for taking this on.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. All right, well that then I'll work with the city manager to clean this up and we'll get this out today or tomorrow.
Great.
Sounds good.
Harvey and Debbie, we do have one additional hand raised. Not sure if you wanted to take any more public comment.
Sure. Is that good for you, Harvey?
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing my screen then.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine.
John, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, it's okay that you're not sharing your screen, but the last 3 bullet points, I'll just give you some facts that are established facts. Sandra Harmon received 2 fatal shots in the back. That is clearly stated in the autopsy. And there it says shot 1 hit her in the left shoulder, shot 2 hit her in the right shoulder. One of those shots came out through the middle of her chest. So there is no debate on, we're speculating here. You can read in the autopsy that that's what happened. Also, there's quite a bit more information out there than apparently Mr. Nisbet has looked at. The DA released all kinds of investigative photos, videos, interviews, audio interviews, including the autopsy. Those 2 rounds are fatal rounds. That should be expressed. She received 2 fatal shots in the back, maybe a third. Number 2 is the description of how she was shot in back, where she dropped the gun and then finally was shot by deputies. You got that wrong. The video that I've shared with you and that you can see came from Deputy Baba's camera, and I would use his name, Deputy Baba, not the second deputy, because that does specify which video you're looking for. Shows that Sandra Hart has just a few frames, but it shows that her hands were above her head, holding the gun in a manner consistent with a shotgun, but above her head. This is the same frame that the district attorney uses to prove that she did have a shotgun in her hands. That same frame shows that that shotgun is above her head. That same video shows that the gun hits the ground and then there's another shot. So remember that we're talking about the second volley of shots here, not the third volley where she put them in a position. They had to shoot her. I understand that. It's the second volley of shots is what is the whole story there is. For me, is what happened during that second volley of shots. And of course, what happened during the first volley of shots, how the whole thing spiraled so far out of control. I understand that there's not a criminal investigation of DA. This would be a criminal investigation of the sheriff's office, because they're the ones who looked at the video first and either they did or didn't delete it and then provide less than the true full story to the DA. Because again, the DA just takes the evidence from the police. He doesn't really question them as to the veracity of that evidence. And this is made clear by the fact that DA never obtained the log files. And this is pretty critical missing piece of evidence. She was shot in the back. Their coroner says it, and the video's missing. So I would those are how you should attack those last 3 bullet points that you're trying to put together. Is focus on there was 2 fatal shots in the back. It's stated in the coroner's report. And that, I know you can't just go out and choose them, but what we're talking about here is, was evidence covered up or not? So I understand Mr. Nisbet, his name is on there, and I can see why he wants to make sure that he's not making any accusations that are going to make him look foolish. But I guarantee you, I will send him the link at the end of this meeting. If he wants to go look at it's 3 gigabytes of data, but most of that is video. You don't even need to watch the video because you've seen it. You can scroll through it. You'll see the reports, what the deputy said. You'll see where Deputy Dominguez clearly states that during the second volley of shots, he thought he shot her in the back. Now, he didn't say in the back. He thought he hit her because he saw her shoulders shrug. He saw the gun fly out. And in the video that we have, in that one frame, you can see that when the gun flies out, her back is facing to Deputy Dominguez. That's what you should be talking about. I'm sorry if I got a little stride there. I think this meeting is great. I really like the way you're approaching this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to change the thing to 2 bullets in the back according to the autopsy report. So I think that's good info.
Fatal shots.
Fatal shots.
Thank you.
David would like to add comments as well.
Can we make that change? Just
I was going to hope that we could do that
before. So because we're talking about a fact here, so I want to make sure we understand what we don't have factually accurate and what we're looking at here.
I think there are two points here. So actually, no, sorry, it's the second to last bullet here. What was the committee's desire to note that these were fatal shots? What would be the recommended edit here?
The autopsy report shows that she received 2 fatal shots in her upper back.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other edits suggested to that bullet?
Well, members of the committee, if I could just make a comment before we allow Mr. Oblovi to speak. So part 1 of Mr. Ullum's comments was that fact there, and we've just changed it. Part 2, he did make other comments about a lot of other data that exists. And I just want to remind the committee that yes, I haven't seen all that, I'll admit that, but it exists. And we have, the AG has access to all that. They have access to all that. So evidence is evidence, but then drawing conclusions is drawing conclusions. And so they have if there is everything Mr. Ullum mentioned, he mentioned lots of things that exist, that are facts, that are evidence. The AG has access to all that, and we should assume that if they take this on, they're going to go where the facts lead them, and they're going to look at all that. So I just wanted to remind us that we don't have to summarize everything, thinking that this is what they're going to rely on. They're going to have access to everything that Mr. Ullum has access to, and more potentially.
Right, I agree with that. Is there any more on that item? Did we want to hear from David Oblovi? Was that something we're waiting on?
I'm here.
Did you have an additional remark that you wanted to make?
I did. No, very much so. So 2 thoughts on this, and just to show the level of complexity that goes into the evidence that we're sort of parsing here, and why my suggestion is you take out all of the evidentiary stuff and trust that the community will get to the AG the information they need to make these determinations. There were actually 3 shots to her back. One was a lateral shot, which means it was to the side of her back. It was potentially fatal. The there were, of that 3 shots, 2 of them appear to be fired by Deputy Dominguez. One of them appears to be fired by Deputy Baba when she was bending over to get the gun. The 2 that were fired by Dominguez appear to have been fired, or at least one of them appear to have been fired when she was standing with her back to him. But we can get into this, and we can spend 4 hours here and not even break a sweat. And I don't know what relevance that has to what we're asking the Attorney General to do. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. But the most important thing I want to say is you must ask for a criminal investigation. Okay? You think it's possible that crimes were committed. You can't ask for a review. And the Attorney General views these 2 things very differently, is my understanding. You need to ask for a criminal investigation. And if there's nothing there, then the Attorney General will come back and say, hey, nothing there. But if you don't ask for a criminal investigation, you may well not get one. And I think that is imperative to ask for in the letter, which is why I screamed no when you took it out. That's like the most important thing in this entire letter, is that those words, criminal investigation. So I would ask that you reinstate those words, do what you will with the evidence, it doesn't really matter, and I will now get out of your hair.
Catherine, can you scroll back up to that sentence in the beginning? What about conduct an independent criminal investigation into the shooting death of 56-year-old Sandra Harmon, period? To me, that would cover all eventualities. You're not calling out, just the death or the investigation. You're just saying criminal investigation into her shooting death, into her death.
Yeah, and am I still on or am I gone?
You're on.
Oh, I am. Okay. And I think that will, the reality is that criminal investigation into her death, if there are any anomalies that are attributed to the investigation itself, they'll call those out. And if there was criminal activity, they would presumably prosecute them. So I have no issues with that at all, personally.
I would strike and the district attorney's investigation itself.
Okay.
No, I'd leave the investigation.
Yeah, criminal investigation into the shooting death of 56-year-old Sandra Harmon, period.
And nothing into the DA?
They will get to the DA if it comes to that.
Okay.
We're not going to create the perception that we think he's criminally liable here. We want them to have a mission of investigating this. I agree, criminal, let's just leave it broad.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that is missing from the narrative on the according to the district attorney's report, so if we go down to the 3rd paragraph, to me it's relevant that she was not just carrying a shotgun and a bottle of alcohol. She was reported by the witness as warning about a race war. And I think that should be in there.
Why?
Well, because that was what triggered the witness, is my understanding. I mean, the gun and alcohol too, but what the trigger was the talk of a race war. I can go without it if you think so, but I mean, to me, if you're not sold, leave it out then.
Yeah, leave it out.
Okay.
Anything
Other
further?
than that, I think it looks good. No.
Great. All right, well, I think the direction is clear then. Bob, do anything further or
We don't.
not a subcommittee to adjourn?
I'm willing to adjourn the meeting, Harvey.
I am too.
Thanks
All
to
right.
the community members and staff.
All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.